Should we be concerned with the direction of gaming currently? Because looking at everything now over the last, I'm going to say like 8 to 9 years, I mean, things have changed drastically, which tells me that in the next 10 years, things could be completely unrecognizable. But really, if we just sort of look at some recent trends and events that have been going on, I mean, you could say even this past year or so, then look back on where we were in 2013. It's very telling, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about that here today. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. So I really started thinking about this recently, and then, of course, we had everything that happened with Gran Turismo 7, which gave people a lot of time to think about where we are now with some of these single-player games. I mean, Gran Turismo 7 was down for 30 hours. I mean, we can see this. The Verge had an entire piece, and there was actually a response from Polyphony around this whole thing. There was a patch 1.07 that broke the game so badly, they had to take it offline for over an entire day. And the problem with Gran Turismo 7, the online is also connected to the single player, meaning if the servers are not up, you can do like one arcade race, and that's kind of it. You can't access your cars. You can't do anything with the world map. You can't just play the game offline. You have to be online and connect to the servers for it all to work. Their explanation is immediately before the release of 1.07 update, we discovered an issue where the game would not start properly in some cases on product versions of the PS4 and PS5. This from Polyphony Digital's CEO. This was a rare issue that was not seen during tests on the development hardware or the QA sessions prior to the release, but in order to prioritize the safety of the save data of the users, we decided to interrupt the release of the 1.07 update and to make a 1.08 correctional update. Now, the biggest thing with GT7 is there are microtransactions tied into this game. In fact, I'm going to kind of argue that the entire game is modeled around the microtransactions. See, everything comes back to the credits that you earn and how they can essentially control how many you're earning. I mean, they moved around rewards for winning races. Some they added to, others they took away from, and they also don't let you sell your cars, which you rack up cars pretty quickly that you'll probably never drive around, and obviously they play it off as it's a car collecting game. But why do I need like 2 or 3 of the exact same car then? Why can't I just sell the car, get some credits, and then buy a car that I want? Well, that kind of flies in the face of the microtransactions attempting to sell them to you. But they say, in GT7, I would like to have users enjoy lots of cars and races, even without microtransactions. I mean, in that case, I would just get rid of the microtransactions, the always online connection for a single player game. But, you know, at the same time, the pricing of cars is an important element that conveys their value and rarity. So I do think it's important for it to be linked with the real world prices. I want to make GT7 a game in which you can enjoy a variety of cars, lots of different ways, and if possible, would like to try to avoid a situation where a player must mechanically keep replaying certain events over and over again. So the real idea of it being connected to the internet, at least how it was described before, is they don't want people cheating to get a bunch of credits and then basically buying everything, going online, and ruining other people's experiences. And I get that because obviously we see it with a lot of games that people who will cheat in, for example, Halo Infinite, are a lot of cheaters in that game for a while there, and 343 is trying to work all of that out. But this is a game where, I mean, I feel like most people are going to play it single player for like 80% of the time, and then they'll go online and just kind of race around with their friends. Or sure, there is a small percentage of people who get really into this to where it's like almost pro level, but I kind of feel like they're using the idea of online connection at all times, DRM, for a single player game as being a deterrent for cheaters, as a way to explain why it has to be connected without including, oh, well, the microtransactions are kind of tied in because we want to move credits around when it comes to, say, real-world values of cars. It's like, I mean, I get you want it to be a simulation, but at the same time, it's a video game, and we're trying to essentially escape from the real world and just race around in a really cool car. But basically my point is, it's annoying. It's a single player game, and it has DRM, and it has to be connected to the internet for you to play offline by yourself. It's frustrating, and it's an odd turnaround from what we were used to, again, back at the start of the PS4 and the Xbox One generation. I mean, there was serious pushback to the Xbox One and what Microsoft was trying to do there, which, I mean, everything they were describing is kind of what we're seeing now with DRM and systems having to connect to the internet. I mean, the Series X has to connect to the internet initially when you start it up, and even beyond then, games have to connect to get like an activation, and they've even shipped titles like Halo Infinite, which this is the first time I've never bought a physical copy of Halo when it released, because the game wasn't even on the disc. It was so weird, and they chalk it up to smart delivery and all this. Like, just make a Series X disc for Halo Infinite and ship it so I can have a physical copy of it. Again, we're working towards that all-digital future where there's a lot more control by the publishers and the platform holders. But Sony did a smart thing in 2013. This is exactly what they had to do to basically stomp out the Xbox right then and there. Clearly, they knew what Microsoft was looking to do as they worked up to that, because Microsoft wasn't making these announcements leading into E3, and then they had to backtrack, but it was too late. Sony showed up. They did their very well done, I will say, video where they showed how to share a PlayStation game, and it was so simple, and it just hit so hard for Microsoft. But people naturally on Twitter went back and took a look at Sony's older tweets, because, I mean, that's what Twitter does. If there's one thing you can count on Twitter, is they do this thing where it's like, is this you? And it's like, yes. The thing with Twitter is they want you to know that you have some form of hypocrisy. You're a hypocrite. Basically, everyone's a hypocrite at this point, and the Bird app just decided to make you aware of it today. This is particularly funny because it's a big corporation. It's like, all right, yeah, technically they did this. Here's the PlayStation account where they say PS4 disc-based games don't need to be connected online to play. Thunderous, deafening applause. This is June 10th at E3 when they pretty much steamrolled Microsoft. And I just noticed everyone brought this tweet back up. Look, here's RGT posting a GIF about it. And then people were going through and just dunking all over them because of what was going on with GT7. I mean, you give gamers time where we can't play your game, there's going to be a lot of replies going on. This is the turnaround that I'm talking about. And the biggest thing here that people were pointing out with this tweet is it just made me think about it. It's like, wow, things have changed this much in less than 10 years. Where are we going to be 10 years from now if this is the path we're on currently? I mean, think about where we're heading right now. We have the cloud, which is really being pushed heavily by some pretty large companies. Even Ubisoft is revealing a new cloud computing tech built to power the game worlds of tomorrow. The idea here that they can literally, according to them, leverage the power of the cloud, which, yes, we've heard, but then you would probably have to be connected online for single-player games, right? Like, let's say they build out an entire world with an Assassin's Creed game that you can explore by yourself, but you have to be logged in and connected, otherwise it won't work. And the thing with this is, I'm mentioning Sony right now, but like Microsoft clearly has some DRM issues going on. They have their own always online games, and even Nintendo's jumping in with the subscription service to where they don't have virtual console anymore. You subscribe to a service that if it ends, you lose access to all of these games that they've been providing you, right? These retro games. One of their Mario Kart games that they have recognized many times now as being part of, I guess, the canon series, you say Mario Kart 9, Mario Kart Tour, is a free-to-play, always-online mobile game that leverages microtransactions heavily. I mean, Nintendo's to the point where they'll actually take away games from the digital storefront, which makes no sense at all, whether it's the Mario 3D All-Stars Collection, Mario 35, or even Fire Emblem. Yeah, I think people just forgot about that one. But they're all doing this thing that plays into the idea of a DRM-filled future that is easily controlled by publishers, developers, and platform holders. I mean, even Square has fallen victim to the live service bug where they're releasing games that are full price, like we see with Gran Turismo 7 with microtransactions and battle passes being intertwined. I mean, Babylon's Fall is the latest example from Square, and it's just, I mean, it's just an ugly situation for that one. But then it goes back to things like Marvel's The Avengers, where that was such a poorly received game that Crystal Dynamics is now working with Microsoft on Perfect Dark. They even released Chocobo GP, which is like a $50 game that has such heavy grinding involved when it comes to just getting a character that you feel more inclined to spend a bit more money so you can race around as Cloud. I mean, we're to the point now where it's like big news if there are no microtransactions in your game, which is weird to think about, but I mean, I guess it's kind of been that way for a couple of years, right? I mean, Hogwarts Legacy got announced, right? And people were excited. Then they showed the gameplay during that state of play, and people like lost their minds. Like, this is the Harry Potter game we've been waiting forever to get our hands on. But like, people were asking about microtransactions. Chandler Wood has to go on Twitter, says, we've seen this question coming up and want to set the record straight. There are no microtransactions in Hogwarts Legacy, and over 10,000 likes. People were so excited about this. And I'm thinking that should have been the assumption from the start, but that's just kind of where our minds are now with this live service subscription-filled gaming landscape that we find ourselves in. The funny part is, I have to admit that Don Matrick saw where the industry was going. I mean, obviously a visionary here. He's just 8 years too early. If he showed up now with the Xbox One concept, always online, DRM, digital games, I mean, I feel like it would go over a lot better now than it did back in 2013. Although that Kinect probably wouldn't. It's pretty clear that people have moved on from the idea of these gimmicky kind of things with Kinect, Move controllers, and all of this. Unless you tie it into VR, most people aren't necessarily interested in hooking a camera up. So that part didn't necessarily age well. So it's currently March 2022, and I'm genuinely curious to see where the industry is in March 2032. Maybe I'll come back and look at this video to see where we were and what we were expecting. But at this time, I believe that in 10 years, single-player games without DRM or online connectivity will feel nostalgic. I think it'll be an all-digital industry at that point, and cloud gaming will probably be more integral than ever. So those are my predictions now, and I'll come back and look then. But with live services seemingly taking over, Sony really making a big push for it. Microsoft's been on board with this for a while with their subscription services, and Nintendo's starting to kind of check it out themselves. I think it's going to be an interesting 10 years that if you like the single player stuff and not necessarily having to be online or having physical ownership of your games, I mean, that might not be a future for you, but we'll see. We'll see what happens, because who knows, maybe the live service stuff falls apart and we got to go back to basics and start making just regular games again. But let me know what you guys think about all of this down below. Are you concerned about the direction of games? Or maybe you're excited, like the idea of Ubisoft building out this whole cloud infrastructure and having these really alive, massive worlds. That could be appealing, or maybe you're an all-digital gamer now anyway, and it doesn't really bother you. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.